Order, order. Caroline Ansell to move the motion.
It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, Mr Hosey, and I beg to move that this House has considered government support for a circular economy. According to the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, a leading NGO on the topic of the circular economy, it is a system where materials never become waste and the natural environment is able to regenerate. Products and materials are kept in circulation through processes like maintenance, reuse, refurbishment, remanufacture, recycling, and composting. The sustainable and regenerative system that it creates is one that sees economic growth decoupled from our resource consumption. As far as I hope through the course of my remarks, I will make clear that actually there are economic opportunities to be derived from a more circular economy, and is a great example, in fact, of the environment and the economy going hand in hand, rather than being pitted one against the other as competing and conflicting aims. This approach runs counter to the take, make, dispose, or linear approach to resource consumption that we have become accustomed to. And to illustrate that status quo, imagine the single-use plastic bottle of water. This bottle takes approximately 5 seconds to produce in a factory. Once transported to a shop for you to buy, it takes around 5 minutes for you to drink, at which point you put it in the bin. Having taken just 5 seconds to produce and 5 minutes to consume, this plastic bottle can then stay in our environment for 500 years. And even then, the modest local hero, founder and lead member of Plastic Free Eastbourne, will caution me that the journey does not end there, in fact, and every piece of plastic we have ever produced is still with us somewhere. A plastic bottle, when it eventually starts to degrade, does not simply disappear, just breaks down into smaller parts, microplastics, and even nanoplastics. And this is one of the reasons for the campaign rollout of refillable water bottles that you will see if you visit my fair constituency of Eastbourne. The first refillable water station, which I had the great privilege to attend back in that time between lockdowns, was in 2021. That one refillable water station has now sprung to 14, with 5 further refill stations in the pipeline. So people can again return and return and return again in their own circular economy to fill their bottles. But plastic bottles are still very much in production and in their millions, and we pay for this convenience, and perhaps without thinking about the hidden costs to our environment that are inevitably involved. So it has been hugely important work that DEFRA has undertaken to make strides in this area, and specifically to improve recycling rates in England. And as recently as the weekend, DEFRA made important announcements about its reforms for simpler recycling. This will see councils across England having to provide for the collection of the same set of materials from households for recycling, including a weekly food waste collection. Again, of course, there is perhaps a higher calling on this notion of food waste, and I met just this week with an enterprise, Too Good To Go, and their app connects local people, local shoppers, to local businesses, anxious, desirous to pass on food that otherwise would go to waste. And just in my constituency alone, 70,000 kilos of food, equivalent, I'm told, to 156 days of constant warm showers in its carbon emissions, has been saved from landfill. And the recycling reforms don't stop there. I know the Minister's Department has been working tirelessly to create an extended producer responsibility scheme for packaging that moves the burden of responsibility and payment for waste management from local councils to packaging producers. This scheme will help to make sure that the polluter pays for the packaging legacy they create, and in doing so will encourage innovation, clearly, and lower packaging use. We'll also make sure that all of the packaging we use has a clear label stating recycle or do not recycle. Last week, as the Minister will know, was Recycling Week 2023, and the theme was the big recycling hunt, an entire week devoted to shedding light on the everyday recyclable household items that we do not put in the recycling bin, such as aerosols and plastic cleaning and toiletry bottles. With so many other random recycling labels out there at the moment, the presence of a standard, recognisable label will remove doubt and help consumers to get it right when they go to the recycling bin. Another critical aspect of this scheme is the modulated fee structure. And in theory, this structure will mean that producers are charged different amounts, with recyclable items paying less than non-recyclable ones. However, my understanding is that industry is still awaiting the details around the modulated fees, meaning the timeline for rollout is stretched, and there could there be a scenario where producers are paying into the scheme before this modulation has been implemented. This modulated fee structure is the key to driving the action we want to see from packaging producers. So could I ask, could the Minister provide some further clarity around the timeline to ensure we are incentivising producers not only correctly but in a timely enough manner to deliver change to their packaging? The third pillar to these packaging reforms is the deposit return scheme for drinks containers. I know that the progress of this policy has been fraught due to factors outside of DEFRA's control, but it was an aspiration and an ambition recently raised at Plastic Free Eastbourne's Water Summit. It's considered important. So how do we focus on this solution? It's worked incredibly well, we've seen, from our European neighbours, less so across the border and in Scotland, and I understand there are potentially lessons to be learned from that experience. But an update from the Minister on this scheme would be most welcome. Individually and collectively, these reforms will be game-changing for our recycling system and help to boost our stubbornly low recycling rates in Eastbourne and across England. Indeed, my own council, the recycling rate sits at 32.8%, which is sadly below the national average at 44% and below our next-door neighbour, Wealdon, at 48%. But I am concerned, is there a risk that the focus on recycling may overshadow other processes that I referenced earlier, such as reduction, reuse, refurbishment, remanufacture, and composting, that are also critical to the creation of the circular economy? And it is with the mention of composting that I would like to return to the topic of food waste very briefly. And it is certainly welcome news that households will now have a weekly food waste collection. Even collecting food waste into its own bin has been shown to reduce the amount of food waste created by embarrassing people perhaps into cutting their waste. Awkward, but true. So this is welcome. Because the carbon emissions from food waste are enormous and represent a huge waste of money and food. Processing food waste through composting and anaerobic digestion will help to reduce the emissions that would have otherwise been created when food waste goes into our general waste bin. However, I'd also like to draw attention to what other countries, such as Italy, are doing around their food waste collection and their collection of compostable plastics. These plastics are made from bioplastic, meaning that unlike regular plastics, they are not made using fossil fuels. These biodegradable and compostable versions are also able to break down quickly in industrial composting facilities. And this very challenge, the move from fossil-based plastics to more sustainable, more renewable sources, raw materials like corn or starch, was the subject of a petition by Eastbourne's plastic-free community, which garnered over 1,000 signatures in support. In fact, 1,446 letters, all subscribed to this move. And I know that this topic, this important topic, was covered in some depth by the Environment, Food and Rural Affairs Committee in their report published earlier this year. I am aware that there have been challenges made to that transition to bioplastics, around disposal challenges, around that one-time use question, and also around land, of course, to grow and then harvest these raw materials. But we see the world over that march towards the bioeconomy and that ever-increasing uptake and interest in bioplastics is something that we must surely be watching with very keen interest. I understand that the UK has not got as many of these composting facilities as anaerobic digestion plants, but compostable plastics are increasingly being adopted by businesses who want to do the right thing for the environment. Compostable plastics are a clear example of the market in action. Recognising the problem posed by single-use plastic waste, companies have invested in the research and development and come up with an innovative, tech-driven solution. There are many businesses operating in this space already, and we should surely incentivise, not disadvantage, the work they're doing to advance this by a framework that doesn't recognise the good that this could represent. And the application of compostable plastics is broad, and I've seen them used already in items such as coffee cups, online clothing deliveries, packaging, coffee pods, sauce sachets, tea bags, and perhaps most relatedly, food waste caddy liners. Indeed, the government and the Ellen MacArthur Foundation are both in agreement that there is a role for compostable plastics in specific applications like coffee pods and tea bags. But in a recent DEFRA consultation, Consistency in Recycling, question 16, it was put forward that the introduction of compostable caddy liners, a move supported by the BBIA, had 77% approval rating from those who'd taken part in the consultation. But in the executive summary, the commentary suggests quite the opposite, and that there was a majority that disagreed with that move. Is this something the Minister could resolve? And I understand I've devoted a lot of time to packaging, but I think that is a reflection both of where the current interest lies with the general public and also where DEFRA has taken most steps. But, of course, packaging is only part of the circular economy. The UK is throwing away 300,000 tonnes of electrical waste from households and businesses each year. This makes us the world's second largest annual contributor of e-waste, averaging a whopping 23.9 kilograms per person. The idea of fast tech, the disposable use of electronic goods, is gaining prominence among campaigners, and I know that disposable vapes in particular have become a focus for this. And the government has taken steps to tackle disposable vapes in particular, but the issue, of course, is very much broader. To illustrate, recent research by Materials Focus, for example, revealed that there are 7.5 million unused electrical children's toys hidden in households across the UK. And even if they do make it out of the cupboard, they do not necessarily then go to the right place. 3 million toys were sent to landfill in the last 6 months alone. That's enough to fill Hamley's flagship Regent Street store nearly 14 times over. Not fun. We've all seen Toy Story 3. I understand that some councils are now voluntarily introducing either curbside or communal bins for e-waste collections. But even rolled out at scale, will this tackle the problem head on? Do we not need to look further upstream to the design of the products and the obligations we place on the producers of them, which, as I understand it,
on that point, would my honourable friend give way?
very happily.
Thank you, Mr. Hoysey, and I thank my honourable friend for her excellent speech in bringing this important matter to the House this afternoon. And while she's talking about encouraging people to behave a certain way with reusable products, I wonder if she'd agree with me that we could also in this place utilise the tax system effectively to ensure that products such as period products that are currently being promoted as period pants, which we tax at 20%, as opposed to those products that you cannot reuse. Would she join me in supporting the Marks and Spencer's campaign that, yes, they went to number 10 to actually say pants to the tax?
Alan Ansell.
Thank my honourable friend for pants to the tax, and very happy to confirm that I am 100% behind this campaign. It is a strange and extraordinary anomaly, in fact, that period pants are classified as a garment rather than a period product. I can't imagine anybody wearing period pants on other days of the month and just for fashion or for the pleasure. So I 100% subscribe to this campaign because not only is it levelling up then to change the VAT regime around it, it's levelling up between disposable and reusable, and surely we want to promote reusable in this particular context. It's also then an important incentive in that it gives choice. And my understanding is those leading companies have pledged that the tax difference they would pass on to customers. So this again is another important way in which we can use the frameworks here, the levers here around VAT and tax, as the Honourable Lady mentions, in order to help people to make the best and wisest decisions for them. So I thank her very much for raising that important campaign. Some products are more easily reused and repaired than others, and a more circular approach in general would be a welcome step up in ambition. But I understand that this is something the Minister is actively engaged on through reforms to the Waste, Electronic and Electrical Equipment regulation. And it would be good to understand and to hear how those reforms are progressing. Only 1% of clothes are actually recycled into new clothes each year. And globally, it has been estimated that 1 truckload of clothing is landfilled or burned every second. On our high streets, charity shops do a fantastic job at providing access to textile reuse, both for clothing and also the sometimes overlooked topic of textiles more generally, with furniture now and upholstery also in the mix. And access to these stores has helped to normalise reuse as a result. But the work of charity shops will only go so far and does not tackle the root cause. And back in 2018, the government committed to consult on a textiles extended producer responsibility scheme. But this has, of course, been a little superseded by very pressing priorities for the department. But there was that commitment to help establish the best waste hierarchy in order to better manage textile waste. And with the government target to half residual waste, we have an incentive to tackle textile waste too. But without a clear route to correct disposal, clothes will otherwise continue to be sent to landfill and incineration. So in light of this, I wonder what more maybe the Minister has planned to tackle textile waste. Now this might be a Miranda Hart moment. In my notes it says lubes, but I think for the benefit of Hansard, I might just default to lubricants in the comments I wish to make. And this is essentially around cross-department collaboration. Energy, as a resource, is a resource that we must husband effectively and efficiently. And with the UK targets to achieve net zero emissions by 2050, we have been made to reassess our relationship with energy and the composition of specific resources that this may require. Intuitively, of course, we know that a more circular economy is one that uses renewable energy sources. And back in the south, across the downland, you can see from Eastbourne the most glorious vista across the waves and to Rampion offshore wind farm, a wind farm that currently powers half of homes in Sussex, with ambition for extension, which would take in the whole county. And as we continue to adopt renewables at scale, we must make sure that the resources that go into harvesting this energy are likewise sustainable. Now, the topic of blade recyclability is gaining traction, but this sustainability mindset should cover all aspects of the process, right down to whether or not the lubricants used in the generation of energy are sustainable too. Bio-based lubricants, typically from vegetable oils, would be one very effective, very powerful transition for our turbine, our wind farms to adopt. And of course, the UK has abundant bio-based resources to produce bio-lubricants, rapeseed oil, for example. And there are further advantages to this adoption of a bio-based fuel. And not only do we see, as evidence from the Eden project, do they extend the life of the machinery, but they have a wider economic or environmental benefit too, that if accidentally discharged, as happens, into the environment, they are benign compared to petroleum-based lubricants. Now, while waste and resources as a whole sits with DEFRA, wind turbines, I acknowledge, are a DESDES matter. But it is vital that these cross-cutting, cross-department cutting issues do not fall through the cracks. So I would love to know what work could be potentially undertaken between DEFRA and DESNES around issues and challenges such as this. And I will also be taking that up with colleagues in that department. I know that by covering only packaging, electronics and textiles and renewables, I've missed out, of course, many other sectors that would benefit from a circular economy. But I hope I've gone some way to illustrate the opportunities and the case for government support. Business giants like Currys and Apple to M&S and IKEA have been experimenting with reuse and take-back schemes. Indeed, the likes of eBay and they stake their entire business model on reuse. And I'm sporting my latest purchase, my vintage M&S jacket, recently procured through eBay. And they are joined by a whole suite of startups and SMEs across the country who have put the circular economy at their heart. However, across the board, businesses are concerned, of course, that we won't see perhaps the leap from these small-scale initiatives and trials to mass rollout without stronger incentives. A circular economy is a more efficient one. It can save us money, but can also make us money. In short, this is not a hair-shirted environmental mission, but there are economic opportunities to be pursued. But after decades of disposability, there is work to be done to ensure that action is aligned with the government's commitment to create a more circular economy. Thank you, Mr. Hosey.
Has considered government support for a circular economy. Before I call the next speaker, can I just remind the front benches that in these hour debates, the speaking times are 5 minutes, 5 minutes and 10 minutes for the government. Andrew Selous.
Thank you very much. Can I just check, Mr. Hosey, you didn't want to go to the other side of the chamber first?
Oh, sorry. I do apologise. I didn't have the honourable gentleman's name down. I'll happily take Mr. Jim Shannon.
I'm very happy that you're very happy to do so, Mr. Chairman. Yeah. Can I just say it's a pleasure to speak in this? First of all, congratulate the Honourable Lady for Eastbourne for leading today's debate, for setting the scene so very well with the evidential base and the information that's so important. As we approach COP, it's always good to have these discussions to assess what stages we are at in terms of product stability and waste management. Throughout the United Kingdom, we all have different strategies to contribute towards a circular economy. So it's always my intent to give a Northern Ireland perspective. I do it every debate I come here, and I make sure that the position of us within the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland is very clear. Always a pleasure to see the Minister in her place. I look forward to our response and for her solution-based answers, which she always gives us. And also very pleased to see the two shadow ministers in their place. It's a pleasure to see the shadow spokesperson for the SNP, that he survived Storm Babette. We missed him last Thursday in the debate here in the Chamber, which I know was his responsibility, but he was unable to contribute, so it's good to have them both here. Back home, the Department for Economy has initiated a draft circular economy strategy for Northern Ireland. It is stated that we are all experiencing the impact of resource scarcity in the rising cost of living. We know that the earth provides an abundant but finite supply of resources that we are rapidly depleting. That's a fact of life. That's where we are. So this revolution of resources is going to be an essential part of reducing our emissions and will be embedded within climate action plans and the delivery of Northern Ireland's multi-decade green growth strategy. Our research back home for this strategy has shown that Northern Ireland imports and extracts some 31.5 million tonnes of materials annually. That's the equivalent weight of nearly 16 million cars. Puts it into perspective, the size and magnitude, the massive of what we're discussing. For a country the size and the population of Northern Ireland, we have 1.95 million people, Mr. Chairman, who are consuming a disproportionate amount of the Earth's resources, and it's quite clear that has to improve. It is estimated that each person in Northern Ireland is consuming some 16.6 tonnes of resources per year. I always like also when they give a Northern Ireland perspective, they give an idea of what we're doing as a council. And I say we as a council, the council area that I live in and reside and also have responsibility for as a constituency. Ards and North Down Council, where I both work and reside, the council has proven by committing to acting sustainably to create a vibrant and a healthy environment. In terms of taking into consideration our net zero targets and waste management, there's always room for improvement, but being able to recognise the contribution local councillors and smaller devolved institutions can make to the UK as a whole is the first major step, I believe, in regulating sustainability within our environments and indeed the products. Ardsburg Council, or Ards and North Down Council as it is now, have a very, very proactive recycling strategy within the councils. It takes, and we all have the blue bins, the grey bins and the black bins and the bottle banks as well, and all the things that we do to try and make recycling more sustainable. But what we have unfortunately come to as a crux in the road, where perhaps the recycling targets that we've set seem to be achieved, but with the population growth we don't seem to be doing any more. So it's something I know that the Ards and North Down Council are looking at to see how they can do it better. In conclusion, Mr. Chairman, I would encourage through these comments in relation to Northern Ireland, when the Minister doesn't have a direct responsibility for, but I know that she engages with the departments back home in the Assembly and also through the Assembly directly with the councils. So can I ask that the Minister can take into consideration the contribution that Northern Ireland, Scotland and Wales can make to circular economies across the United Kingdom? It's not something you do on your own, Mr. Chairman. I think that's the point I want to come across. We can't do this regionally in Northern Ireland or regionally in Scotland or regionally in Wales, but we can do it if we all come together. So I think the good thing about agreeing on the targets, agreeing on the strategy, is that we can then ensure that we can all benefit. So I look forward very much, Mr. Chairman, to engaging and perhaps we will revisit this topic after COP28 this year. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to take part in this important debate, so ably introduced by my honourable friend for Eastbourne. Someone said to me recently that when we say throw it away, we need to realise that there is no such place as away, because everything goes somewhere and ends up somewhere. Matter goes to different types of matter. So we need to think about our language sometimes and just have a whole different mindset in this important area. And what we're talking about today is about reducing waste, reducing cost, conserving nature, and making sure the polluter pays. I think those are principles that we would all sign up. I think they are inherently conservative ones as well, but they are really, really important ones. And we have to get away, as my honourable friend from Eastbourne said, from the linear economy concept of take, make and dispose to the circular economy of reuse, repair, recycle and remanufacture. And I would pay tribute to those businesses, large and small, that have been engaged on this journey for a while. I think it was first from Unilever that I heard the expression, the circular economy. I think many businesses do get it. I think they want a helping and supportive environment from the government, which I know the Minister will try to provide for them. We have had many examples in this debate already of items going unnecessarily to landfill, and one of them already mentioned is toys. So I was particularly pleased to be able to present a Point of Light award, Mr. Hosey, to Charlotte Liebling in my constituency in Leighton Buzzard, who runs the wonderful charity Loved Before. And what Loved Before does, it takes children's teddies, which have been greatly loved, often hugged, night after night, and when those children don't want them anymore, they go to Love Before, they are sanitised, repaired, repackaged and loved again and again and again by other children. And Charlotte has prevented thousands and thousands of teddies from going to landfill all over the country, and it was a particular pleasure to present Charlotte with her Point of Light award from our former Prime Minister a couple of years ago. We are in the middle of a cost of living crisis for reasons we're all familiar with, and I think it is important to point out to our constituents that reusing resources and reducing waste can save the average household around £300 a year, and that is not an insignificant sum of money, Mr. Hosey, for many families. So there is definitely an economic aspect to help people's purses and wallets at the moment. I'm pleased to see many of our leading companies like IKEA, Currys, Primark and Apple with their take-back schemes. I think it was scandalous that in the early days you would buy a mobile phone. Many of us get pressurised to replace our mobile phones after even only 2 years, and then the mobile phone companies don't go and upgrade the software on our mobile phones, so we're almost forced to replace them. But it's good that companies like Apple now have a proper take-back scheme so other people can use those phones and they don't get wasted. I was very pleased to see the announcement that the government brought out on Saturday morning. We have to recognise that recycling rates have plateaued in England at around 44%. They rose for a number of years, but we're not making the progress that we want. And the government's commitment to a deposit return scheme in the next year or so, the requirements on local authorities to recycle standardised items, making sure there is a mandatory recycling label, so that very clear, easy to understand guarantee that if a product has the mandatory recycling label on it, wherever you are in the country, you can put that in the recycling bin and know that it will get recycled and not have to wonder whether your local authority does it or not. Weekly food waste collections, really, really important. A couple of years ago, I learnt that if food waste was a country in its own right, globally, it would have the third highest greenhouse gas emissions on the planet. You know, that is hugely significant. You know, it's very dangerous gases. It's methane, which is particularly bad for the environment. So this is so important. And I would gently say to some of my constituents, even up and down my road, that I don't always see the food waste bin outside up and down my road, Mr. Hosey. I make sure mine goes out every week. But, you know, it is actually part of our civic responsibility, you know, to get with the programme, actually. If we care about environment and care about our planet. So a little bit of gentle encouragement from me there to some of my constituents. And the extended producer responsibility scheme for packaging, absolutely right. The polluter pays principle. The government is so right to be committed to that. It shouldn't be the taxpayer that generally who always has to pick up the tab. Those responsible need to raise their game as well. And I welcome the government's commitment to the near elimination of biodegradable municipal waste to landfill from 2028. That is excellent. I'm also pleased to see a commitment. We want to raise that 44% of recycling up to 65% of municipal waste by 2035. That's excellent. I'd love it to be sooner, but let's try and at least meet that target or get there earlier if we possibly can. And also, I'm particularly pleased about the mandatory digital waste tracking. There are too many fly-tipping cowboy criminals. I mentioned this issue in my maiden speech over 22 years ago, and we need to crack down on them. And congratulations to Peter Byrne at Central Bedfordshire Council, who has got a number of convictions on this front recently, which is excellent. So a couple of areas where I think we could do more. Farm food waste. There's too much farm food waste going to waste. That's food that could be eaten. It's not always easy. I had a particularly prolific apple tree this year, Mr. Hosey. I tried to give them away. I did as much as I could, but I'm afraid, some was wasted from that. I've peeled cores and sliced and put as much as I can in my deep freeze, but, I think farmers need help in this area. Textiles, we've already had mentioned in this debate. It is shocking that only 1% are recycled. I'd like to do another shout-out to my dry cleaner, Met, of Four Seasons Dry Cleaners in Dunstables, who has repatched my gardening trousers, I think about 12 times, Mr. Hosey, and I keep on wearing them, and that is very good. And we've got to get away from fast tech in electronic items as well. And great that the UK was in the lead on the UN Global Plastic Treaty as well. And let me just finish by saying absolutely shocking that a plastic bottle, 5 seconds to make, 5 seconds to drink, and then 500 years in our environment. We have to do better on that front.
With the honourable gentleman's gardening trousers. Dave Dugan.
Thank you, Mr. Hood. Genuine pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. I wanted to touch on a couple of issues that was raised in the debate, and I'm grateful to the honourable member for bringing this important debate. In Angus, Mr. Hosey, we recycle, and I literally mean we, you and I, and everyone else in Angus, recycles 54.7% of our post-consumer recyclate. And I think, whilst that's something to be celebrated, I'm relieved that the SNP administration and Angus Council are not resting on their laurels, and in their last budget they were looking at measures to get that figure even higher. And whilst I salute the honourable gentleman's plea for civic responsibility in recycling and disposing more responsibly of food waste, let me gently suggest that a statutory responsibility is far more effective, and in Scotland there's been a statutory responsibility on local authorities to collect at the doorstep food waste, and we've used that to very good effect. Disposable vapes, I think, in a parliamentary sense, are almost universally loathed. I had to replace a tyre recently as I succumbed to the innards of a disposable vape. And in this debate, we need to separate the truly pernicious public health element of disposable vapes, cynically marketed to children, and focus on the environmental consequences, which are vast and disastrous for us. Now, I understand that the government is looking at that. I would very much appreciate from the Minister if she can give us an update on what actual actions are being planned. Similarly, I know we're not allowed to use props in the chamber, Mr. Hosey, but these are one of the allegedly biodegradable products that we see marketed, and I wonder if the Minister could update the chamber on how genuinely biodegradable these are, because it's my understanding that they're biodegradable in little more than a marketing sense, and that the amount of energy that you have to put into it, supposing you can find a facility that can recycle it, is truly appalling. Unlike here in Westminster, the Scottish Government is committed to implementing legislation to transition towards a circular economy to support the growth in green businesses while cutting waste and climate emissions. However, the UK Government continues to abuse its post-Brexit powers to prevent the Scottish Government from taking action. And we saw this after the Scottish Government introduced to the Scottish Parliament the Circular Economy Bill, which will give ministers powers including to set local recycling targets, which is fine, ban disposal of unsold consumer goods, and place charges on single-use items. And it is with that last provision, Mr Hosey, that the Scottish Government legislated further with the deposit return scheme, which was due to go live in August 23, were it not for the malign last-minute intervention of the United Kingdom Government unilaterally halting Scotland's ambitions until October 25, at the earliest, to hold Scotland back to keep us in line with England. Mr Hosey, a partnership of equals? I think not. The European Commission adopted a new circular economy plan in March 2020. Europe is marching on ahead. 13 countries have a deposit return scheme. It's entirely unremarkable on the continent, and Scotland would be amongst that number today were we not shackled to this failing Westminster system. A transition towards a circular economy is crucial to our fight against climate change. We must remain committed to shifting away from an economy, as others have mentioned, that puts disposal. And I'm actually struck by the honourable members about throwing away. Away where? It doesn't go anywhere. It stays with us. So we must remain committed to that priority. A society which is based around recycling and reusing principles, and this must be done with deeds rather than words. I'm saddened that the UK Government exposed its deep-seated and justifiable insecurity by preventing Scotland from actually following through on the legislation in this entirely devolved area, solely to show who's in charge and mask its own legislative inaction. A shift towards a circular economy would also deliver reductions in energy consumption, something that should be a priority alongside green power, but is not here in the UK anyway. And a transition to a circular economy could deliver significant gains for industry and providing savings, as others have already evidenced, for households and businesses alike. The Scottish Government has been working to implement legislation to drive and create that circular economy that would support the growth in green businesses, and the deposit return scheme was a significant part of that. And when the Scottish Government were prevented by Westminster from introducing the DRS, Westminster blocked what was a cross-party consensus on a devolved issue. And contrast that, Mr Hosey, with the when Scottish Government disagrees with the UK Government, we can issue or we can decline to provide legislative consent, whereas when Westminster decides that it disagrees with Scottish Government legislation, it blocks it. A union of equals? I don't think so. We are committed in the Scottish Government, Mr Hosey, to furthering the ambitions of environmental protection and renewal, and we will continue to do so.
This afternoon. And first, I'd like to offer my congratulations to the Honourable Member for Eastbourne for securing today's important debate. And she made really so many important points during her opening speech, which obviously we all listened to with great interest and agreement. It feels like we've been talking about the circular economy for a very long time, but in terms of action, we seem to be going backwards in some areas. It's been estimated there are enough unused cables in UK households to go round the world 5 times, along with a hoard of 20 unused electronic items in each and every household across the UK. Yet electronic manufacturers and online retailers do little or nothing to stem the flow of more and more of this stuff. It doesn't seem to occur to them at the design stage to even think about making a product durable, able to be reused or even repurposed, or to be built from readily replaceable and upgradable components. Far too often products are made with components that will fail but are then incapable of being repaired or can only be fixed by the original manufacturer. Our economy is stuck in a linear mindset in which the full cost of environmental impacts are just not factored in. That means high-quality, longer-lasting products are undercut by cheap, poor-quality goods designed for single use or a short lifetime. But as ever, across the UK, there are loads of great initiatives. And in the summer, I had the privilege of spending a day at the Greater Manchester Renew Hub in Trafford. It's a vast warehouse complex run by Sue with reuse and repair workshops, operated by a whole team of community organisations. There's a furniture restoring and upcycling area, bike repairs, electrical equipment testing and repairing, with excellent quality items resold through the local shops and indeed online. And also, I must say, Mr Hosey, in my own constituency of Newport West, our local shop called Remake, it hires out products and repairs items and runs classes like sewing classes to enable local people to actually repair their own products and give them skills for the future, which is brilliant. It's clear we need a proper circular economy action plan, but unfortunately we've got a hopelessly piecemeal, hodgepodge, emblematic a system emblematic of the government's sticking plaster approach at the moment. Even worse now, it seems we have the Prime Minister who's trying to turn recycling into a political football. And the Honourable Member for South West Bedfordshire and the Honourable Member for Strangford mentioned about the recycling figures, and certainly in England they are very low. And Scotland, Angus, I do apologise, not Strangford, I do apologise, I got my countries muddled up there, sorry. The Honourable Member for Angus made the point about Scotland striving for higher recycling figures. And can I just say, in Wales, the recycling figures are always over 60%, and we are striving for 70%. We are the third best recycling country in the world at the moment, and we are striving to be second. But some 80% of the environmental impact of a product is in the design phase. So to prevent waste, we have to look at things such as built-in obsolescence and electronic products which are either designed not to be repairable or can only be repaired by the manufacturer. And the government's own advisor, RAP, recommended the government should support businesses to focus on remanufacturing and repair, which will generate new jobs and tackle structural unemployment. And there's also a huge missed opportunity to generate growth and jobs in the economy. Widespread adoption of circular economy business models has the potential to boost the UK economy by around £75 billion in gross value added, according to RAP. It also believes that moving to a more circular economy, including recycle, could create around 500,000 jobs across all skill levels and regions of the UK. So we need a strategy for a circular economy with proper and effective buy-in from the devolved administrations. This will drive up vital business investment in circular design and reusability. So getting in place the right government support for a circular economy is a real priority for the next Labour government. Thank you.
Minister.
Thank you very much, Chair, Mr Hosey. And I'd obviously first like to congratulate my honourable friend for bringing this matter to this chamber today, and also for giving me as the Minister the opportunity to talk about so much that is going on in this sphere. I also would just like to extend a welcome to a gentleman who has come up from my honourable friend's constituency, Mr Sterno, who is sitting here, and I believe he's something of a hero locally, and has introduced a plastic-free world, basically, in Eastbourne. So well done for that. And also initiated the Water Festival and refillable water stations. So I think he's an absolute model of the kind of constituent that we would all welcome. So thank you for all the work that you do. And thank you to other honourable members and friends who've taken part. So natural capital is one of our most valuable assets. The air we breathe, the water we drink, the land we live on, and the stock material resources that we use in our daily lives are absolutely at the heart of our economy, our society, our way of life, and we absolutely must not take these for granted. In fact, the Right Honourable Member from South West and Bedfordshire, I think, highlighted this himself very clearly in his speech. So I just want to set out the things that we are doing in government, and I think more than anything, contrary to what the Shadow Minister said, much as I respect her, we are taking this really seriously, and we do have a joined-up strategy. She was suggesting it was all piecemeal, but I think it'll be very clear by the end of my speech that it is certainly not piecemeal. So in our 2018 Resources and Waste Strategy, we set out how we will preserve this stock of material resources by minimising waste, promoting resource efficiency and moving towards the circular economy. And the strategy also made clear our intent to minimise the damage caused to our natural environment by waste and to promote clean growth as we move towards reducing the amount of waste that we produce and better handling the waste that we do generate. And the strategy combined immediate actions with firm commitments for the coming years and gave a clear long-term policy direction in line with our 25-year environment plan, which was refreshed in January of this year as our environmental improvement plan. So this is our blueprint for eliminating avoidable plastic waste over the lifetime of the plan, for doubling resource productivity and eliminating avoidable waste of all kinds by 2050. So maybe I should present a copy of it to the Shadow Minister. Anyway, today I would like to assure my honourable friend from Eastbourne that my department does remain absolutely committed to these ambitious goals, as I know she is. It was very clear in her speech, and that we've set all this out in those publications. And indeed, over the past few years, we've actually made considerable progress towards realising those things set out in our plan. So, in terms of plastics, we began in 2018 by introducing one of the world's toughest bans on plastic microbeads in rinse-off personal care products. And actually, I was just a backbencher then, and I won't say just a backbencher, I said I was a backbencher. And it's one of the things I'm most proud of being part of, having come to this place, that we raised it, we got the evidence, we got the data, and it happened. So that was a huge step forward. We followed that in 2020 by restricting the supply of single-use plastic straws and cotton buds and banning single-use drink stirrers. And from the 1st of October this year, we've restricted the supply of single-use plastic plates, bowls, trays, and banned single-use plastic cutlery, balloon sticks, and expanded and foamed extruded polystyrene food and drinks containers, those ones with the sort of bubbly, crackly containers. Furthermore, we also then have increased the carrier bag charge to 10p and extended it to all businesses back in May 2021. And that's reduced bag sales across the main retailers by an incredible 98%. And in addition to our domestic progress on plastic, the UK has shown real international leadership in tackling plastic pollution. That's been mentioned by a few honourable friends. Continuing to deliver international UK aid programmes through our Blue Planet Fund. I was actually fortunate. I went to Colombia in the summer and I launched a £10 million programme working with them, and some of their beautiful islands, beautiful as they are being completely weighed down by weight of plastic, lack of recycling, and the terrible damage that's being seen in the ocean. And our money is helping with education, with work programmes to tackle all of those things. I was genuinely so proud to see what we were actually doing and taking a real lead on that. And really significantly, we're also co-sponsoring the proposal to prepare the landmark and legally binding treaty on to end plastic pollution, which is absolutely critical. And the UK is also a founding member of the High Ambition Coalition to End Plastic Pollution, which is a group of 50 countries calling for strong global obligations and targets, including the goal of ending plastic pollution by 2040. And we hope that the eventual instrument, and this is happening really quickly, will include obligations relating to the whole life cycle of plastic, from production and consumption right through to the environmentally sound management of waste, to create a legal framework for reducing the total quantity of plastic in the globe that goes out onto the market, and to set a really, really clear roadmap for that. But I always say, even when I go out on the international stage, we have to take the lead at home. We have to demonstrate. We can't tell other people what to do. We have to be doing it here. And I think it's quite clear, I think everybody in this room feels the same. So, and beyond plastic pollution, we're overhauling our whole approach to recycling and packaging waste. So the Collections and Packaging Reforms Programme comprises of a number of schemes. So we've got the Extended Producer Responsibility Scheme for Packaging, known as the EPR, and that, as has been pointed out, very much is based on the polluter pays principle. And we've got the Deposit Return Scheme for Drinks Containers, known as the DRS, and we've got Simpler Recycling, formerly known as the Consistency in Recycling Collection Scheme. So we've simplified the whole thing, including the name. So together, these reforms will make up three of the most significant commitments in that resources and waste strategy, and they play a really key part in delivering our goals in the environment. I will give way in a second, and they will drive clean growth and they will reduce the amount of waste that we put on the market. So I'll give way to the Shadow Minister.
I thank the Minister for giving way. In terms of the EPR and DRS, would she agree with you that these are laudable schemes, but they seem to have hit the buffers because they've been delayed, we've had consultations, and we're a long way down the line, and yet nothing's happened so far. And in terms of the consistent recycling, would she agree with me that this has been a long time coming and it shouldn't be a political football?
Rebecca Brown.
Well, she won't be surprised, and I'm going to completely disagree with her. All of these schemes are aligning. Maybe she hasn't been listening to the announcements that have been going on recently, to all the things coming down the track, and maybe she doesn't have a complete understanding of how all of these schemes will dovetail together. And that's why it's so important that we're listening to business, to industry, so that we make these schemes work for everyone. Yes, I will give way.
I'm very grateful to the Minister for giving way. And I think she's gently pushing back against the Labour frontbench spokesperson about the perceived lack of commitment from the UK government. It's my understanding that the UK government had, or the Conservative Party had in their 2019 manifesto, a commitment to DRS which included glass, and that target is now slipped to 2025. Can the Minister confirm that? Because there's a very good chance, putting it mildly, they might not be in government in 2025.
Minister.
So the Scottish spokesperson raised the whole subject of the DRS in particular in his speech, but also I was disappointed at the approach that he's taken, because actually my officials and I are at pains to be working so closely with all the devolves on this, particularly Scotland, in the light of what happened with your deposit return scheme. And now I had a meeting just this morning with business and industry, and the key thing they want is good relations. They want interoperability of the schemes, and that's partly why our EPR, we moved by 1 year, because we listened to business and industry, and they asked us for more time, because these things are really complicated for our businesses to roll out, and we have to make sure they work and that they will deliver what they're being put there for. And so absolute alignment would actually be the thing that would work the best for all these schemes to get what I think we all want, and that's what we're working on with all of our devolved counterparts. And it would be actually brilliant if the Shadow Minister in Wales could help that along, and our SNP colleague could help us along in Scotland. And we generally always have great support from our honourable member from Strangford. So that, I think that's something where we could actually really work strongly together to help this. The overall objective of our packaging scheme is to encourage businesses to consider how much packaging they use, to design and to use packaging that is more easily recyclable, and to encourage the use of reusable and refillable packaging. I hope I have brought along my own refillable water bottle. I see that the Shadow Minister has not brought hers along, and this is something we could all be doing. We've committed to setting ambitious new packaging waste recycling targets for producers, and the packaging EPR policy measures will be key in delivering these. The data is already being gathered by the businesses, which will inform what the fees will be, and that money will be used to pay for the simpler recycling collection. So it is all circular, and the more recyclable the packaging that the producer puts on the market, the lower the fee that they will pay. So that will drive the design, and the reusable and the recyclability of the product. I actually think it's genuinely very exciting, and there are huge opportunities for business, industry, and innovation, as some colleagues have actually referred to. And the deposit return scheme will help boost recycling levels, just as the EPR will, and reduce littering. That was one of the main reasons why we wanted to bring in that particular scheme. And as has been mentioned, the simpler recycling details have now been launched. They're very flexible. We've worked with local authorities, so there'll be something that they know they can work with. They can put all the dry recyclables into one bag if they wish to, and then the food waste will be separately collected. That will be mandatory, and as has been pointed out, this is one of the biggest contributors to our emissions, and it is DEFRA's biggest emissions contribution is food waste, so we must collect it, and it's absolutely right that we're going to make that mandatory. I will give way.
Just very briefly, am I right in thinking that the local authorities who recycle the most have 3 bins in the main, and that they recycle the most with only 3 bins? Would the Minister confirm that?
So 3 bins is the direction that it could take. If a council wanted still to separate all the products out separately, like mine does in Somerset, and that works for them because they've got the systems for that, and then they know they can get the onward market right, that's fine. But if they want to put all those dry things into one bin, they can. So you will end up with 3 bins. That one, food waste, and the big general waste, which simply can't be very, very hard to be recycled. But that will tend to go to incineration to create energy. But the worst thing is landfill, and that's the thing we're trying to eliminate altogether. So we are also honouring our existing commitments to waste prevention. That's really important. So for England, maximising resources.
Order, order. The sitting stands adjourned.